Around 280 million people around the world suffer from depression. It's such a huge problem, and I've seen it so often in my GP placements. Seeing how much it affects all of these people has made me want to understand it better. Johann Hari wrote this book, Lost Connections, with those exact intentions in mind. To understand his mental health better and to share his discoveries with the world. In this video, I'm going to discuss why antidepressants can't be our only solution to depression. How our socially isolated society is actually causing depression, and why we can be hopeful for the future. So let's get into this. He's such a good writer. You should definitely read the book. Okay, so I was pretty shocked when I read this. So a study was done on people recovering from depression, and it showed that only 25% of the recovery could be put down to the chemicals themselves, and obviously the reaction that has on the brain. A further 25% came down to just normal, natural recovery, and a whopping 50% of recovery was due to the placebo effect. So basically, the belief in the story that you're going to get better is actually having a bigger impact than the chemicals in the drug themselves. And that baffled me when I found that out. Another statistic that shocked me is that the proportion of people on antidepressants who continue to be depressed is about 65 to 80%. From this, we can safely say that biology isn't the only thing causing depression. It isn't just a chemical imbalance in the brain, because if it was, then the chemicals would have a much bigger impact. This medication alone can't be the only solution that we provide to this problem when it's so ineffective. But to find them, we have to first understand the problem better. And that's what Johann Hari really aimed to do with this book. Through exploring the complex nature of depression, he discovered one simple deficiency in our society, and that is connection. Connection with others, connection with meaning and purpose, connection with past trauma, with status and respect, and many more. In this video, I'm not going to try and cover all of those connections because it would be impossible and I wouldn't actually end up telling you anything. So I'm going to focus on the connection with other people and some of the amazing stories that Hari told in this book. Oh, he's such a good writer. Okay, so rather than thinking of the brain as an isolated island, we could think of it as having hundreds of bridges to the outside world. Those are all your connections. As you receive signals from the outside world, things are being carried on and off the island. So social media provides us with the ability to connect with literally billions of people. We feel constantly connected to everybody, but the relationships that we have through these platforms often have no meaning whatsoever. Because we're basically just posting to prove that we aren't living boring lives, rather than to actually provide value to other people, whether that's comedy, education, whatever. And I loved this quote from the book. That loneliness isn't the physical absence of other people, it's the sense that you're not sharing anything that matters with anyone else. So Hari delves into the evolutionary biology of humans to point out that we're made to be in tribes. Those that did have a tendency to wander off and seclude themselves were killed. They wouldn't have long enough to pass on those genes to the next generation. So we aren't designed, literally to our fundamental core, to be like polar bears. They can survive on their own, but we can't. But that seems to be how we're living now. We're now more socially isolated than ever. I found it so sad to read in the book that American adults, when they were asked how many people they could genuinely confide in, the average answer was 0. See, I found living in London last year quite isolating at times, because you're surrounded by all of these people, but that doesn't stop you from being lonely. Having meaningful connections is the thing that stops loneliness. This book has an incredibly inspiring story about meaningful connection. A story about a community banding together to stop a lady from taking her own life. Koti, not sure how you say it, is a neighborhood in Berlin. It's made up of elderly Muslims, teenage punks, single mothers, and retired communists. A pretty diverse population, and as you can imagine, many of them didn't see eye to eye, until one member was in desperate need of help. Nuria, also not sure if I'm saying her name right, was an elderly lady living in Koti, and she couldn't keep up with the constantly rising rent. As a result, she put a note in a window saying that she intended to kill herself before her eviction. The community then decided to set aside all of their differences to help Nuria, and in turn discover that they had much more in common than they initially thought. In this story, the whole community protested together, and as a result, they got a rent freeze. See, we're very individualistic in Western society. If I have a problem, then I'll solve it myself. I'll go buy some self-help books off Amazon, or I'll do some yoga to help my mental health. Hari suggested that instead of looking for a quick fix for ourselves, the solution may be in focusing our efforts on the problems of others. And also being genuinely vulnerable about our own problems to allow our community to help us. One doctor in London took this social approach into his practice, and it was really, really effective.
So I'm a GP at the Bromley by Bowes Centre.
The doctor partnered with local charities and volunteer groups to prescribe social connection. They have hundreds of programs that create meaningful connections through helping the local community. The groups will rejuvenate local gardens, cook together, walk together, and so much more. See, I really believe in the message of this book, and I think that these groups could be a huge benefit, both individually and to our local communities. As an aspiring GP, I would love to be able to prescribe these interventions in the future. Here's why I think we can be hopeful. The chemical imbalance theory tells you that your brain isn't working properly and that these drugs are going to fix it. That's wrong. It's constantly changing to your environment. You see, depression creates changes in your brain. It isn't a result of them. If you didn't exercise for a year, your bones would become weak. However, if you then did weight training every single day, your bones would adapt. It's the exact same in the brain. If your brain gets deprived of connection, the neurotransmitters and hormones and all of those chemicals will adapt to that situation. They'll drop. The reason I'm so hopeful about this new theory is that it takes the solution out of the hands of the pharmaceutical companies and puts it into your own hands. Antidepressants can be an incredibly helpful way to kickstart this journey, to provide the boost to join these local groups and form these connections. But just as Nuria couldn't solve her problems alone, the antidepressants can't either. So I thought I'd finish this video how Johann Hari finishes his book. All these depressed and anxious people all over the world, they're giving us a message. They're telling us something has gone wrong with the way we live. We need to stop trying to muffle or silence or pathologize that pain. Instead, we need to listen to it and honor it. It's only when we listen to that pain that we can follow it back to its source, and only there, when we can see its true causes, can we begin to overcome it. I've only touched on one disconnection in this video, and there are 6 others in the book. I highly recommend giving it a read if you're interested. If you enjoyed this video, then please subscribe. Leave your thoughts, feelings, and feedback in the comments, and I will see you very soon.